final day here, final coaches here at SEC Media Days in Atlanta. 440 Sports, brought to you, of course, by J.E. Dunn, one of the top 100 places to work in the United States, 2022 best place to work, industry-leading benefits, and, of course, it's an amazing concept, Billy. Billy Liucci here with Texas A&M, of course. Amazing concept. Care about the people you work with. Treat them really well. Care about their health and productivity, and all of a sudden they'll be pretty good employees, so go check them out, jedunn.com. And I feel like that's kind of a theme for all the coaches these days in the SEC. All the shysters are gone, and it's Josh Heupel and Mark Stoops and, you know, all these guys that Sam Pittman that seem to care pretty deeply about their programs. Jimbo Fisher is one of those guys, fits in great in College Station. What were you expecting with all the summer nonsense that's happened? What were you expecting, and was he a little bit more subdued than you thought?
No, it was about what I expected. I think it's probably not important, but if you know Jimbo, like, I'm sure he understood that, the last time everybody saw him, it was the press conference where he was understandably livid, and that created so much talk and so much, energy around college football and everyone talking about it. But that's the last time everybody really saw him in front of a mic and talking. So to come out here today, that's what I expected. And then clearly the coaches in the league, you didn't hear any talking about other ones. It was obviously that wasn't going to go on. And with the way Nick Saban came out earlier in the week, I think Jimbo was exactly how I would have thought he would be.
Yeah, and honestly, and Jimbo's so self-deprecating about how fast he talks and how, like, I'm not going to lie. I'm one of these that my wife has to tell me, like, hey, slow down. Yeah. No, don't talk.
I'm not.
No, I know you're not. But Jimbo's kind of the only guy who could have gotten himself in trouble, and he stayed on topic. And let's talk about the team, because I find that to be far more interesting. I came into this week thinking pretty confidently, and all summer long, Texas A&M clear number 2, potential top 10, top 5 type of team. If things break right, they find the right quarterback, they could be a playoff contender. Do you still feel that way, or do you feel they're like Arkansas is better, Mississippi State's better? Like, how is your opinion on where they stand in the SEC West? Has it changed at all this week?
No. And I think they can certainly lose games to teams like that. And that's going to be everyone across the SEC. Hell, Alabama, I think, was it 5 of their 8 SEC games were decided probably midway through the fourth quarter or later last year. I think Bama will actually have less of those type games this year. I think they're going to have a lot better team. But I think A&M, everybody else not named Georgia, and I'd bet you will see Georgia play some close games this year too, with that East improving, in my opinion. But look, what I keep getting asked, and when you mentioned Arkansas, Mississippi State, they both beat A&M last year, and they're certainly capable of beating them again this year. You look at those quarterbacks. A&M in September, it's Van Dyke, Rogers, and Jefferson versus we don't know who A&M's quarterback's going to be yet. So that kind of stuff is a concern as you go in. But what I keep coming back to, Braden, is if you look at all those teams, plus throw in the LSUs, the Tennessees, the Kentuckys of the world, I still think A&M's ceiling is higher than all of them. So if you make me pick, like, hey, who's the team to contend with Georgia and or Alabama, I'm still going to go A&M, because I think, if, like you said a minute ago, if they get that quarterback thing right, that ceiling is that of a playoff contender.
I'm going to ask you about that quarterback in just a second, but what is the thing that has kept them, they beat Alabama last year, they beat them on the recruiting trail, and I think you and I have talked about this before, but it just seems like, all right, you got to beat the game, got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And it was the Mississippi schools last year, Arkansas, and even a bad LSU team. What is the thing inside the locker room? Because, I mean, we can talk players, we can talk quarterback play, like we all know that stuff. But what is the thing that needs to be tweaked inside the locker room by Jimbo that fixes that problem?
I'll tell you this. I don't know, other than I think I can go back to Ole Miss and Mississippi State and say on 1st and 10, 1st and goal in both instances, down 5 in each game with a chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter. They get stuffed for a 3 or 4 yard loss on 1st down in both those games. You take a fourth quarter lead in both of those if you don't get knocked off the ball. You're moving it, and so maybe it's finishing in the red zone. That's been a problem for them in terms of touchdowns. But I really think, Braden, we'll find out after this year what I'm about to say. I think, and nothing against Zach Calzada, but he got thrust into action, and he wasn't the answer at quarterback. I think it's as simple as a quarterback injury, because if you go back to year 1 under Jimbo, they beat a top 10 Kentucky team. They beat a top 10 LSU team. They were rolling through the bowl game at the end. They didn't lose one game they weren't supposed to win. You go to year 2 under Jimbo, it's a 5-loss season. That's not good. They lost maybe, I would say, Auburn at home. Auburn was number 8, but that wasn't a great Auburn team. They didn't finish number 8. Maybe. Then they lost to number 3 Georgia, number 1 LSU, number 1 Clemson, and number 1 Alabama. So, and then in year 3 they went 9-1, lost only to Bama, won the Orange Bowl. So in his first 3 years, I think you'd have a hard time picking a game to say that's one they should have won. At Mississippi State with 3 first-round draft picks at night, Fitzgerald at QB. You can nitpick, but to what you're saying, it happened last year, I would say 4 times. So it's more of like, let's get out of this before it becomes a thing. I think since Jimbo's been at A&M, the trend has actually been they win the games they're supposed to, and they'd only broken through a couple of times. You think of LSU and then obviously Bama. So to me, the bigger thing would be get the quarterback position right and then go use that Bama game to catapult and win a couple more big ones.
It's interesting because the end of the Ole Miss game, or the second half of that Ole Miss game, because they jump out, Matt Corral jumps out, and they're slinging it all around. Elko makes good adjustments, and they play a really good defensive game in the second half. And they're that one turnover in the goal line away from beating them. Now the Arkansas game is a little different. They got pushed around a little bit. But let's go to the quarterbacks here, and obviously much better. You and I have talked about this, much better than this stage of the season last year. Certainly after 2 games, way better than they were. Can you try to handicap it at all? Like, is there percentages? If I'm going to Vegas, do you have some odds for me?
If I was going to Vegas, I'd give you, in my opinion, very slight odds for Haynes. Like I just think what people keep forgetting, because I think Max Johnson's stud, and I think people so underestimate him around the SEC in terms of he's 27 touchdowns and 6 picks last year with a terrible O-line, lost Boutte, no real running game. They wouldn't throw I think the tight ends caught 5 passes and total dysfunction. And to go 27 and 6, TD, and he was actually great in that A&M game. Got sacked like 7 times, kept getting up. So, and gets to A&M and everybody goes, wow. And he's better athlete than we knew. So, but Haynes, the one thing no one talks about is he won this job. He's already won it once for Jimbo Fisher, and that 4.45 speed, those 2 things are what I kind of keep going back to. But I think the Aggies can't go wrong with either, because I think they're both winners, and I think but they're different. So judging that battle is going to be really interesting. I think it's Jimbo's, because of the team that's going to be around them, and because they both be back next year, Braden. And when you look at that next year, they're going to return all 5 linemen, all 4 starting D linemen, and a quarterback. And that number 1 recruiting class of all time is year 2. If they can get to about 10 wins this year, even 10-2, you might be talking about a preseason number 1 or number 2, and a real chance to win a national title for the first time maybe ever at A&M. So making this pick, I would say, is Jimbo's probably his second most important QB selection that he's made, because, again, it's like it could very well be a 2-year thing.
It's not just about this year.
And behind, the Jameis over Coker one.
Billy Liucci, TexAgs.com, of course, is the site. I think 10-2, if you finish 7th, 8th in the country, Texas A&M fans super happy with that?
I think absolutely. And look, the goal is to win a national title. It's to win the SEC. Even just to win the SEC, make a play. We get that. But I think not just A&M, but around the country, this thing of, Jimbo hadn't won the big game. Well, he beat a top 5 Florida team. He won an Orange Bowl. He beat LSU when they were in the top 10, and he beat Alabama of all teams.
He won a national championship.
Well, yeah, in that too. I just meant at A&M, yeah, and won it. So, but I think what the people are saying, he hasn't done anything at A&M. But like he pointed out today, just a year ago they finished number 4 in the country in his 3rd season, and then you had a starting QB go down. So if they got back to that 10-2 on this schedule, then I think you got to go back. If you're the SEC Network, your ESPN, you cover college football, you have to go back and say, okay, New Year's Six Bowl and top 5 finish, New Year's Six Bowl, and whether you win it, top 5, lose it, top 10. 2 top 10 finishes, 2 New Year's Six Bowls in 3 years, and the only thing in between was a QB injury that derailed you. You lost a bunch of close games. Then you'd have to step back and go, okay, he has taken that A&M program somewhere they haven't been, and they do have a chance to win a national title in the next couple of years.
Absolutely, of course. No idea the College Football Hall of Fame is falling down around us. It's still a wonderful place to go visit, by the way, if you're a college football fan. Texags, obviously Billy Liucci, the godfather down there in Southeast Texas. My name is Braden Gall, of course. J.E. Dunn Construction is who's bringing you all this content. Top 100 healthiest place to work in the United States. Voted 2022's best place to work in the state of Tennessee. Offices across the Southeast. $5 billion in annual revenue. I know that. Your ears just perked up at that. It is. And they don't even want you to buy $50 million buildings. They want you to come work for them because they're all about happy, healthy employees. And it's amazing how that works. When you care about the people that work for you, they get a lot of stuff done. So go check them out, jedunn.com.